Welcome. Good evening. It's 7 p.m. Mountain Time. My name is Dave Webb. I work with communications and marketing at the Great Vitify Corporation. We want to make sure you get the most out of this time that you're dedicating to us. So I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Jeremy Thornton.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. I sure appreciate it. You're right. I am a clinical nutritionist, an internist, chiropractic physician, working in the area of functional medicine. We work mostly with chronic inflammatory conditions, autoimmune disease, and such. And so, I've been very accustomed to the turmeric curcumin conversation and have used that personally and in practice for most of those years. And tried literally dozens of versions. So like some of you on here probably weren't terribly excited when you heard about a new curcumin technology, right? Anybody raise their hand? They're like, I've heard about curcumin. But, I checked out some of the research, right? I looked a little deeper, and I'm glad I did, because I saw some research that got my attention to look a little closer. And I didn't know if I really believed that was true, that this technology could be up to 277 times more bioavailable. But I thought to myself, if that's true, this is going to change a lot of lives, right? And so we dug a little deeper, started utilizing it, and here we are, closing in pretty soon on 3 years later. And so I'm super excited to be here and share on a very important topic of mental health. Would love to know, just by show of hands, anybody that personally has dealt with mental health challenges, or maybe a close family friend, relative that's dealt with mental health challenges. Luckily, it's less stigma associated with it. People are a little bit more apt to share struggles, thankfully. But it is rampant in the US and across the world. All right, so we're going to talk about the main topic: anxiety, depression, and the inflammation connection. When you think about anxiety, depression, you think about the treatments of these conditions. One of the things you probably do not think about is inflammation. We're going to completely change that tonight, and I'm going to share some things that are very exciting, extremely exciting, in the area of especially curcumin with these types of conditions. All right, of course, we have to share that the following information is not intended to replace a professional medical recommendation. It's only for informational, educational purposes. If you have any of the following symptoms, you should consult a licensed health professional for the diagnosis and treatment of such. Right? All right. Okay, so as you know, the pandemic has changed everything in the area of anxiety and depression, causing things to skyrocket over those years. It's really mind-blowing how much things changed in that short period of time. If you look at this dotted line down here, right, this was the level of anxiety pre-pandemic back in 2019, okay, was way down here. This is you see the dates up here corresponding to the colors on the chart: June 2020, December 2020, June 2021, December 2021. So we went from a level of anxiety here at 8.1% to a high of 36% in that time frame. Symptoms of depressive disorder at 6.5 in 2019, up to as much as 30% in December 2020. A combination of anxiety and depressive disorder at about 10.8% 2019 pre-pandemic, up to as much as 42% during the pandemic years. So we had a huge spike, and many people are still dealing with that, and probably many of you know people that are still haven't recovered mental health from the challenges that we all experienced during that time. The good news is some of that is starting to wane, not completely, but we are getting some improvement. So if we look at, this is showing April of 2019 up to April 2024, okay, more currently, we see the spike. This is anxiety right here. We see the spike up here, and we are down now, 2024, about 17% from a high of 30, right? But that is better for sure, but look where we started, right? We were only at 8 and we're still at 17, right? Depressive disorder, we started at 6.7 up to 23%. Now we were down certainly, but we're still at 13.5%. We're still double, right, what we were pre-pandemic. combination of anxiety depressive disorder, pre-pandemic 11%, height of the pandemic 35%, post-pandemic now 2024 at 21%, still nearly double what we were pre-pandemic. So we still have just a huge toll on people at their mental health, and still recovering from those times. And who knows where we'll be at in the next few years, whether it'll change much from there, or if that's our new normal, possibly, right? So this is a share of adults reporting symptoms of anxiety and or depressive disorder. This is February 2023. All adults, 32%. But look at the age gap here. This is pretty startling. Age 18 to 24 are 50% of those. That's huge. 18 to 24 are 50% of those. Age 25 to 49 are 38% of those. And then we'll go down from there, ages 50 to 64, 29, 65 and above are 20% of those. Those are pretty startling. So we have symptoms of anxiety. I'm going to go through some of these. Anxiety, trembling, rapid heart rate, palpitations, increased breathing, sweating, muscle tension, nervous, hypervigilance, agoraphobia, panic, sense of impending danger or doom. Then we have depression, right? Fatigue and irritability, loss of interest in activities, guilt, low self-esteem, worthlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, prolonged grief, persistent sadness, suicidal thoughts. And then we have this in the middle, which can go both ways, right? They're associated with both. Excessive worry, somatic complaints. This would be your chronic aches and pains, difficulty with thinking, concentrating, decision-making, restlessness, agitation, appetite or sleep disturbances, and social withdrawal. So these are many of the symptoms that people experience there. What we often don't think of is, anxiety and depression, of course, bad enough, but there are health effects of dealing with chronic anxiety and depression over time, right? Anxiety, long-term effects lead to high blood pressure, lead to the inability to fight infection, deteriorated muscles, ulcers, fatigue, chronic disease, major depression. And depression long-term effects, you're 3 times more likely to have a stroke and hypertension, increase in multiple myocardial infarctions or heart attacks, decreased concentration and memory, fatigue, inability to fight infections and chronic diseases. All of this can come, right, from people battling anxiety and depression over a long period of time. And then we have conditions that can cause depression, right? We know depression and anxiety long-term could cause these conditions. These conditions here are things that could lead to or be associated with anxiety and depression. Depressive disorders can be caused by stroke, Parkinson's, Huntington's disease, head injuries, MS, Cushing's, hypothyroid can cause depressive disorders, okay? Anxiety disorders can be caused by hyperthyroidism, hypoglycemia, pheochromocytoma, Cushing's disease, B12 deficiency, porphyria, cardiovascular disease, pulmonary diseases. So these are things that can lead to or be the cause of potentially anxiety. And so these are the most probably well-known, most talked about causes of anxiety typically and depression. One of the main focuses on, and sometimes the sole focus, sadly, in the medical profession is brain chemistry imbalance, right? All we hear about is serotonin and dopamine, right? Neurotransmitters and drugs that can influence those, right? That's the main focus typically of the medical model. Stress can, of course, be a factor. Drugs, genetics, poor nutrition, physical health problems like we just talked about, traumatic events. These can be things that could lead to, of course, anxiety and depression. Now we're finding out as we dig deeper that there's much more than just those things which were typically thought about or talked about. GI issues are a huge component of mental health, right? You've probably all heard about the gut being called the second brain, right? And how much the gut influences our brain and influences our mood and influences our mental health. Toxicity, hormones, cytokines, those are those inflammatory chemicals, those inflammatory mediators. Inflammation impacts the brain, depression and anxiety, and of course, neurotransmitters, which we've talked about. But could brain inflammation, this is where we're going to get into the inflammation connection with depression and anxiety. Could brain inflammation be the underlying cause? That's a new thought. We don't hear about this idea very often, but it's becoming more prevalent even in the medical literature, and we'll talk about that some more as well. In this article here, inflammation in anxiety. And it talks about down here the presence of inflammatory responses and the crucial role of cytokines, those are those inflammatory chemicals, in depression have received most attention. Our author goes on to say, we offer an oxidative stress theory, which we propose works perhaps as a sensor of distress, the imbalances of which lead to neuroinflammation and cause anxiety disorders. Okay. The bidirectional relationship of depression and inflammation, double trouble. In this review, we describe how the immune system regulates mood and the potential causes of the dysregulated inflammatory responses in depressed patients, right? We heard about prior anxiety and inflammation. Now we're talking about depression and inflammation. Inflammation is likely a critical disease modifier, promoting susceptibility to depression. Controlling inflammation might provide an overall therapeutic benefit, regardless of whether it's secondary to early life trauma, a more acute stress response, microbiome alterations, right? We're talking about gut, genetics, or a combination of these other factors. So they're talking about how possibly controlling inflammation might help and provide a therapeutic benefit no matter the underlying cause of the depression. That's a pretty powerful statement. And one thing that I have only in recent years come across as I was studying some of the effects of SSRIs on my patients, those are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? Your Lexapro, your Prozac, your Paxil, your Zoloft, those are all SSRIs, right? I come to find out as I dug deeper is not only did these drugs modulate serotonin, but they had anti-inflammatory effects, significant anti-inflammatory effects. I'm like, well, why didn't I know about this before? Right? In this one here, this article talks about that moderate acute anti-inflammatory effects of SSRIs suggest that these anti-inflammatory effects may underlie anxiolytic effects of the SSRIs. So what they're saying is this anti-inflammatory benefit of these drugs might be the reason they're working as an anti-anxiety, right? Isn't that a powerful thought? This was in Psychology Today. Anxiety and depression meds may not work the way we thought. Wow, right? Key points. Until recently, prevailing wisdom held that antidepressants work by increasing synaptic serotonin in the brain's mood centers, right? That's what we've all been told. New findings cast doubt on the role of serotonin, while at the same time implicating inflammation in triggering anxiety and depression. If, as new studies suggest, inflammation plays a pivotal role in mood disorders, the implications for new treatment options are profound, definitely profound. Isn't that mind-blowing that what we've thought all of these years of anxiety and depression causes and treatments of may have been completely off base in why things worked and why they helped. But where does the brain inflammation come from? A lot of areas we're going to talk about. One of the more common areas. And if you've heard me speak before, you probably heard me talk about the gut and maybe talk about the gut and the brain connection. And I'm going to share a little bit about that. We could go into all night just talking about the gut and leaky brain, leaky gut and leaky brain, the role of inflammation and the gut microbiome in depression and anxiety. So this isn't, just a nutritional perspective in my particular thoughts about the gut and depression and anxiety. This is well documented in the literature. They know that the gut microbiome plays a role in these conditions. So what we start with is we start with leaky gut, which then can in turn lead to leaky brain. I'm going to share a little bit about how that happens. So hopefully you can see my little chart here. But this is what, if we were look at inside the intestinal lining and a cross section, with the gut, that intestinal barrier looks like this. This is here where our food comes through, right? These are little villi where our nutrients get absorbed, these little finger-like sections here. These cells are close up together, tightly knitted together in what they call right here, they're called tight junctions right here. All right. And then there's lots of things which I have a whole talk on that can lead to leaky gut, but basically things like food sensitivities, gluten is a big one right here. Medications, NSAIDs, right, are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, pathogens, right, unfriendly bacteria, unfriendly yeast, medications, chemicals play havoc on this intestinal barrier. And what happens when we start to get some wear and tear on this intestinal lining from all of these things, right? Our diet, an inflammatory diet, inflammatory oils, start to cause some wear and tear in here, start to cause some inflammation, cause these cells to start to release a protein called zonulin. Remember that protein, it's an important one. Zonulin tells these intestinal cells that it's okay to open up this tight junction, okay? When we see a problem with that, and this is where we get the term leaky, right? So now these tight junction, as you can see here, aren't so tight anymore. So these inflammatory mediators, these cytokines, these bacteria release a substance called lipopolysaccharides. And these lipopolysaccharides are not supposed to get out of the gut. And if they do, it causes havoc throughout the body. So now these things are getting through this intestinal barrier, creating an immune response, creating inflammation, tissue damage, immune dysfunction, and end up in the bloodstream, right? Well, what can happen here? Well, this bloodstream can carry, of course, all of this gunk that we just talked about, can carry this through the bloodstream all the way to the brain. Well, looky here, we have this protective layer, right, in our brain called the blood-brain barrier. Anybody heard of the blood-brain barrier? The blood-brain barrier looks a lot like these cells up here in the intestine, right? This barrier here is very similar, and it also has tight junctions. Well, if we have leaky gut and we have this intestinal barrier secreting all of this zonulin that's getting into the bloodstream now because of the leaky gut situation, the zonulin's getting up into the brain through the bloodstream, opening up the tight junctions in our blood-brain barrier, right? And all of these things that we just talked about, these tight junction proteins, these antigens and pathogens and toxins, these bacterial lipopolysaccharides that I just mentioned are not supposed to ever get out of the gut, are now in the brain. And all of these things together creating inflammation, free radicals, right? Oxidative stress, we talked about that before, and neuroinflammation. So what starts as a gut problem quickly becomes a systemic problem and ends up a brain problem, causing neuro or brain inflammation. So, of course, we can't go very long without talking about the power of curcumin and how this powerful substance can intervene in many of these situations that we've just talked about. I'm going to share how. This article here talks about curcumin-mediated regulation of intestinal barrier function. It goes on to talk about how oral administration of curcumin modulates many diseases, including diabetes and fatty liver and atherosclerosis and arthritis and cancer and neurological disorders such as depression, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. And curcumin-mediated decreases in the release of the gut bacteria-derived lipopolysaccharides, right? So we talked about that in that previous picture, that lipopolysaccharides causing neuroinflammation because it escapes the gut. The curcumin-mediated decrease in the release of this LPS, lipopolysaccharide, into the circulation by maintaining the integrity of that intestinal barrier, right? Keeps that lipopolysaccharide from getting out of that leaky gut and making its way up to the blood-brain barrier, right? Curcumin inhibits lipopolysaccharide-induced neuroinflammation. That talks about that lipopolysaccharide again that creates that inflammation in the brain and how curcumin can inhibit that. This systematic review of the antidepressant effects of curcumin beyond monoamines. So monoamines are like our dopamine, our serotonin, our norepinephrine. So let me move something out of the way there. So curcumin improves depressant and anxiety behavior in humans. It can increase monoamines and brain-derived neurotropic factor levels. That is huge. Just do me a favor when we get done with our talk tonight and just Google brain-derived neurotropic factor, also called BDNF, right? Anybody heard of BDNF? BDNF is huge on maintaining what they call neuroplasticity in our brain, and creating and growing healthy neurons and healthy synapses between the neurons in our brain, maintaining memory as we age. If we only understood the depth of what increasing brain-derived neurotropic factor did to the body, I think we would all take curcumin just for that one thing alone, right? Just for that one thing. And it may inhibit the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. We've talked about that earlier. And neuronal apoptosis, that's brain death, or brain cell death, apoptosis in the brain. Curcumin enhances insulin sensitivity. We talked about a month ago about neurodegenerative conditions, right? And how Alzheimer's was compared, or now called type 3 diabetes, because our brain cells develop insulin resistance, right? Curcumin enhances insulin sensitivity. It reduces cortisol levels. So it kind of behaves, let's see here, like a, I can't remember where I was going with that. And it reverses metabolic abnormalities. Adaptogen, that's where I was going. It behaves like an adaptogen, controlling stress hormone levels. All right, beneficial effects of nanocurcumin supplement in depression and anxiety in diabetic patients with peripheral neuropathy. It says there was a significant reduction in the mean score of depression. In addition, a significant fall was found in the mean score of anxiety in the nanocurcumin group. This amazing article right here, they studied not only curcumin, but they compared it to the antidepressant effects of Prozac. And in this study, they showed that curcumin was as beneficial as Prozac at treating major depressive disorder. Does that blow your mind? Is effective as Prozac at treating major depressive disorder. Prozac in America, there's 28 million Americans on Prozac today. And curcumin could potentially be as effective as Prozac. That is huge. Of course, we always have to talk about curcumin. If we talk about the benefits, we have to talk about the hidden secret with curcumin and turmeric is bioavailability, right? This is why we're here tonight, is because of the technology that solves this problem. But as you look at the research and you look at the articles talking about curcumin and its benefits, one of the things they come to and they repeat over and over again is that we know it does all this amazing things, but we can't absorb it, right? And the reasons are due, of course, to its sometimes undetectable concentrations in the blood, due to its poor absorption, rapid metabolism, chemical instability, and rapid systemic elimination. Not only that, but curcumin is what they call hydrophobic. It's afraid of water, right? It doesn't mix in water, and that's a problem when our body's mostly made of water. And let's see, and that's, of course, until now. Until our BioMS technology came on the scene, that has changed everything that we thought we knew about curcumin and its absorption in the body. Remember that article I talked about at first, some of the research that I read that showed that this technology was up to 277 times more bioavailable than traditional curcumin or turmeric alone. And like I said, that did get my attention, that this little bottle right here could be that powerful, but I'm glad that I looked deeper and started utilizing this technology, because it's really changed everything for me and my family's health, my patients, and we've been blessed to be able to share it with hundreds of others. This BioMS stands for biotechnology with micelle solubilisates. It's a multi-patented product coming from Germany through a study at the University of Hohenheim in Germany. It's a combination of nanotechnology and micellized, which they call biomimetic. It's mimicking what the body generally does in the digestive process to fats, or things that are not soluble in water. And what they've done is they've created the curcumin here in the middle in a nanoparticle size. And then they've surrounded it in this micelle structure, which is easily able to carry curcumin in the bloodstream. That's one thing we've never been able to do before. and they've solved the mystery of curcumin and getting it into the body. And it would literally take 17 pounds of turmeric, whole turmeric root, to equal what 10 drops of our curcumin technology could do, and or 25 plus curcumin capsules. And as we talk about the different technologies, first they extract that curcumin from turmeric root, right? Turmeric root has a lot of other things in it. The main bioactive substance, of course, is curcumin. So they extract the curcumin, they apply the nanotechnology, shrinking that particle size to unbelievably small levels, applying the micelle technology around those nanoparticles, which can easily carry it quickly to our bloodstream and quickly to our cells and even our brain. So what size is a nanometer? So if you look at a red blood cell is 7,000 nanometers wide. A human hair is up to 100,000 nanometers thick. And so we're talking about particle sizes less than 30 nanometers. And when we talked earlier about being able to find concentrations of curcumin in the bloodstream, this is a great example of studies where they submitted to, or they had oral doses of 2,000 milligrams of curcumin, and then they followed the patient over time here, right? And so this is concentrations of curcumin in the bloodstream on this side. This is time in hours down below. And right here is the amount of curcumin they were able to achieve with traditional curcumin in the bloodstream. Not super exciting, right? That's the most we could get in the bloodstream. And look where it was at by 2 hours, right? Undetectable again. And this is why scientists have been frustrated for decades in studying curcumin, is because they knew it had all this power, but they couldn't get it in the body. And that's why this technology is literally changing the nutritional industry. We call it disruptive technology, right? And it's certainly doing that. This is our technology here. The BioMS technology is reaching levels in the bloodstream we've never even come close to before. That's mind-blowing in and of itself, is that we're reaching levels we've never seen reach in the bloodstream. But not only that, is that we're able to keep it there, right? Not just 2 hours like that study before, but 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours later, we still have detectable levels of curcumin in the bloodstream. And again, that's something we've never, ever seen before, not even close to that. We were lucky if we added a little black pepper extract to stretch it to 3 hours, right? We've never seen 24 hours from a single dose. And that's part of the power of our BioMS technology. Because after all, of course, it's not about how much curcumin you take, it's how much is absorbed, how long it stays in your bloodstream, in your organs, and in your tissues. That's what's important. And I always end with this visual when we're talking about our technology and being hydrophobic, right? Curcumin is afraid of water, and that's very easy to see in this example here with standard curcumin being added to water. But then we take our BioMS technology and add it to water, and look, it is soluble in water, something we've never been able to achieve before. We can with our BioMS technology. And this is why we're seeing literally lives changed by adding this technology, and why most of us can't quit talking about it. So anyway, I'm going to wrap things up. I'm going to turn it back over to Dave. I think we have a testimonial.
All right, Tanisha, let's get you visible here.
Okay, I'm coming on. Ooh.
If you would like to, we'd love to have you. Otherwise, you can
Yes, I'm coming on camera.
Okay.
Get rid of that background, and ordinarily it would drive me crazy, but I have stopped sweating the small stuff thanks to this wonderful technology. So, can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to just deal with the background. But I thank you so much for letting me come on and share my story with you all. I want to just mention, what my experience was initially. I had experienced feelings of being like overwhelmed, scared, just overly worried. And those things really started when I first relocated from Pennsylvania to Atlanta, Georgia. And things got even worse after being in a really bad car accident. on one of the many highways that we have here in Atlanta. And so what happened is I started having this fear. It was actually a reoccurring fear, that the driver in the lane next to me, if someone was staying pace with me, I was absolutely convinced that driver was trying to run me off the road. And it was just such a strong feeling. And it wasn't a feeling that I got every time I would drive, but it was something that I realized after a while that when it returned, it actually was happening right around my monthly cycle. And so a couple days into that cycle, it would disappear and I was me again. And I think because it wasn't long lasting, I I just accepted it as my new normal because it would be, over. And then I never really consulted anyone, about it. And sometimes I would actually get relief and it would skip a month and that made things even better, and I just went on with my life. Then fast forward to 2019, because that was several years ago. I was single and no kids. But at the end of 2019, now I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a caretaker for my aging mother, and I lose my dad. My dad died of a heart attack. And once upon a time, I was a daddy's girl. We had a great relationship. And at some point, things went wrong and we became estranged for several years, almost 14, 15 years. And just before he died, maybe about 2 or 3 years prior to his death, we had started communicating again. And so when he died, it hit me really hard. I think I was a little confused about I just couldn't shake the grief because we hadn't been close for so long. But before I could even work my way through or navigate through those feelings, I got hit with another family tragedy. And it's really too personal to go into, but I'll just say I was completely devastated. I couldn't sleep. And I would cry through the night. But that was when I was home at night because I worked overnight shift. And so a lot of times when I should have been resting in the daytime, I couldn't rest. I couldn't get comfortable because what was happening in our family was just consuming my thoughts. And so I would report to my 12-hour shift overnight with zero rest. And then we moved into 2020. And everybody knows what happened in 2020. It happened to all of us. And when I was working overnight, I was an essential worker, working at 911, taking emergency calls. I was also a fire dispatcher and did EMS dispatch as well. And the virus just started cycling through our comm center. And eventually I tested positive. And so everyone else in the family had to get tested. All the adults tested positive. My husband, my mom. Fortunately, the kids never tested positive. I was so grateful for that. But when my mom tested positive, it knocked me down. My mom, because of her age, because of her condition, she checked every box on that high risk list. And now I just knew my mom this virus was going to take her out. No one could convince me otherwise. And so while I'm trying to recover from the virus and my mom's quarantining in another part of the house and I can't check on her, it's just heavy on my mind. It's heavy on my thoughts that I brought this to my home, to my family. My mom's going to lose her life behind this virus, and it's because I brought it there. And I just kept thinking about that, and it just weighed heavy on me. And fortunately, I am happy to say that my mom did survive. She did have some serious complications, but not as serious as many, surprisingly. And so She survived. I returned to work. And my third night in, they had to wheel me out due to a panic attack. And I just felt helpless because here I'm hearing, while I'm riding around in the ambulance, I'm hearing the script that I'd usually be saying. 44-year-old female presenting with escalated BP. But they were talking about me. And after that experience, I found a way quickly to get out of 911. But I still had a lot of drama and a lot of issues I was dealing with, even though I came home and started working at home. But a less stressful job. I found that I had a lot of negative thoughts. I never really had, I don't think, a panic attack again, but sometimes it was hard to catch my breath here and there when I was alone with my thoughts. And most times that was when I was showering in the morning. I would just start sobbing, and it just wouldn't stop. And even when I would drive, I would go on long drives by myself. Every Thursday, I had a specific place I had to be, an hour and a half away from my home. And the entire ride, I would just be bawling. And I know now, in retrospect, I look back and I think I could have killed myself. But I wasn't rational at that time. I was just so overwhelmed with sadness and I was lost. And I'm a praying person. And I would pray. I would, in between my spells, I would just be praying. And I remember thinking at a point, prayer used to, when I was dealing with anxious thoughts, nervousness, worry, it used to help calm me and even me out. And one day I remember telling God, I don't know why praying is not helping like it used to. I need help. And I just kept begging for help. And what's really wild is that one of my spiritual sisters and a really good friend from my hometown in Philadelphia, PA, contacts me and tells me about the gold drops. Injuries in the past, and I could predict the weather with my joints. She knew about that issue. She didn't know about what I was dealing with emotionally. And she suggested I give it a try. And with the things Mom was going through, she could benefit from the drops too. So we tried it. And I tell you, immediately I felt the pain relief. But what I did not expect was to find myself again, to find happiness and joy again. I was just excited about, being able to move, waking up to a rainstorm and my body hadn't told me ahead of time that was coming. And then I realized, I don't know the last time I cried. I don't know the last time I was just taken over by negative thoughts. Now, I will say, it still happens today. I do still have negative thoughts, but the way that they appear, they come in, I've described it like this before, it comes in like a bubble. And just as fast as a bubble develops and comes, it just pops. It leaves. I'm not dwelling on the negativity. I'm genuinely happy when I'm alone, when I'm with my family. I'm enjoying quality time with my family. I'm not just there, a body. And it's just absolutely amazing. And I'm so grateful because I know that my girlfriend calling me was an answer to my cry for help. And it just, the one thing that I really, really am excited about is that I didn't mention, and clearly I was spreading myself thin, I homeschooled my children. And when I homeschooled my children, before I was having all of this sadness and grief and everything that I dealt with, I was such a fun mom. I have the receipts. They're all on Facebook, all my videos from when they were preschool age on up. We did annual Dr. Seuss week, and we did nature walks and experiments. Oh, we love the science experiments. But at a point when I was dealing with all of that turmoil, I couldn't give them any of that. And I had to find some other solution for them for school, because I couldn't muster the energy to give my kids what I had given before. And believe me, that made me feel guilty. And it was just so hard to deal with. But now things are so much better. I'm still relying on the program for them, but I'm able to help them with their schoolwork. I'm able to encourage them. I'm able to be involved again. And I'm so grateful. I'm so happy. And
Awesome.
I just love these drops.
I love your story. And I just knew when I had this topic, Tynesha, that I needed you to share your story, because it connected with this, and I knew that it would connect with people that are on here tonight and people that will watch this in the future. How powerful our mental health is, and with life and trauma and stress and things that we go through really can get us in a dark place, in a place that sometimes we can feel hopeless. And one thing that's powerful about this technology is we get to offer hope to people's lives. And that's my favorite part of being able to share our BioMS, our golden drops, right? So thank you so much for sharing. There was a question, Dave, I'll get real quick. Mary asked, when using Nanofy, if you get a blood test, would you see any nanotechnology within the blood work? The answer is no. You might see some benefits to the blood work, right? You might see reduced inflammatory markers. You might see improved cholesterol. You could see improved insulin sensitivity, but you will not see nanotechnology. And nanotechnology just simply means those small particle sizes, right? We're just talking about those tiny particle sizes of curcumin. And so I hope that was helpful.
Perfect. We appreciate that. We appreciate certainly Tynesha jumping on and speaking from the heart, overcoming a lot, and obviously still working through, still working. It's a process, isn't it? We all deal with the things in the ways that we can. And I'm so glad to know that there are now some scientific benefits being shown and proven that are addressing things like mental health issues that we are all aware of, whether we deal with it individually, personally, within a spouse or a loved one within the household, or from within family, and certainly with friends and connections that we have. It's a great thing to be able to offer a solution where we can. So we appreciate Tynesha jumping on. Dr. J, I don't want to be informal. It's Dr. Thornton, but he's Dr. J, Dr. Jeremy to all of us. But we really appreciate all of your attention and your willingness to dive into the research and to dive into that content and to help us understand things that are not built for human eyes. It's built for scientist eyes, and you're superhuman, but we humans need to have it explained to us and put in ways that we can comprehend and then also be able to share. So we're going to wrap this call tonight. We appreciate your being on tonight. We want to do a reminder that these calls are recorded and then posted to our YouTube channel. And the simple shortcut to get to the YouTube channel is to go to vidifyvideos.com. Simple entry, it's just a redirect. It'll send you to YouTube, to our specific channel, vidifyvideos.com. And you can catch all the replays there. We'll also share them on the Vidify Entrepreneur community in Facebook and the World Changers community. And then certainly any others can share and link to those videos as they appear. A little tougher to get through some of the size of the video through Facebook. But again, vidifyvideos.com is a great way to see everything that we've got. In fact, take a look in there and see if there are some things we need to get rid of because they're so old, maybe out of date. But we are in the process of updating that information all the time. We invite you to join us again next Monday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And again, that's a lousy time of day for our Aussie and Kiwi friends, but it'll help with our Europe friends and our people in North America. 11 a.m. Mountain Time. That's the first Monday of July. It's a day that we call the Bounce. We talk about some business opportunities, some promotions. We talk about announcements. We give updates and things like that. Again, those calls are also recorded and saved to vitifyvideos.com. So if you can't make it live because it's in the middle of your workday, we understand, but we want you to know that there are options available for later viewing if you would like. Thanks, everybody. Hugs and high fives all around the world where people are calling in. We love you. We appreciate your time and your dedication for being with us tonight. We look forward to talking with you again very, very soon. Have a great night and a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.